Hello, everybody. Some of y'all might be wondering where Preach is. It's just me and you. Is that a Cassie reference? Of course. Take that. Baby, tell me if you like it. All right. Now, for those of you not familiar with this channel, we do like to crack jokes. So if you're looking for a 100% complete, serious analyzing of this case, this is not the place, all right? Obviously, there's a lot of heavy topics, but there's a lot of fucking funny shit, all right? Diddy was chasing this bitch, and he's like, yo, where Cassie at? And he was running through his assistant's apartment, and at one point, he's like, yo, check the oven. And I'm like, that's crazy. I'm just saying, there's a lot of craziness. So, with that in mind, I want to be able to crack some jokes here and there, definitely laugh about it, but also give you a breakdown of everything that happened this week. This doesn't mean there's not a serious topic, but at the end of the day, who want to be serious for 25 minutes? Not me. But if it's you, you should click off now. Now, with that in mind, let me grab my baby oil. So, in order to get in the mood, you know what I'm saying? Make sure I'm properly zesty. I want to get in the mind of a predator. So this is how she had to be at all times for Diddy when they was about to freak off. Make sure she all shiny, ready to blast off. You dig? Lather it all up. And for those of you wondering, oh, Abba, you just like getting crazy when Preacher's not there. You wrong. The first time Preach saw me oiled up was on camera. Matter of fact, editor, roll the clip. This is how you like Cassie.
What the fuck is going on?
You wanna help me? Let me make sure I get my nipple. Baby, tell me if you like it. Hey, that's my #1 artist, Cassie. Yeah, that's her #1 hit song. Where is she? Where's her other music? Like, don't worry about it, bro. She's busy right now. Getting all dolled up and shiny for me. Yeah, get up in that hotel, bitch. Oh, some of you wonder where Preach is? Hey, listen, he's out there just doing gay shit with his wife, taking vacation and shit. So he left me here to work by myself. Yeah, he don't like being around straight niggas too much, so he left me all by my lonesome. I miss you, Preach.
Don't fucking touch me with the ass.
I'll touch you with my... I called Preach earlier. Yeah. I was just like, I'll be missing you. He didn't reply, but that just means he really missed me. Because you know us, bad boys for life. First, let's just go over what Diddy's facing. Diddy's facing 5 different counts, 3 different charges, 1 for racketeering, 2 counts for trafficking, and 2 counts for violating the Mann Act, which is prostitution across state ground, which is illegal. All right. So for all you dirty dick toms out there who like to bring prostitutes over state lines, bang them and pay them, yeah, you committing a crime. Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, when she getting flued out, don't discuss no finances. You might go to jail, stupid. I'm just telling you. Yeah, you don't want to be up here with me and Diddy. Because we gonna have that butt oiled up. Yeah. It ain't gay either. That's just us making sure you shiny before it's showtime. Stop fucking being a trick, stupid. So RICO, which is the racketeering that he's facing, essentially how that functions is that it means that you run a criminal enterprise or you are part of a criminal enterprise. That could be a business, that could be a gang, that could be a lot of different things. Well, Abba, how do we find Diddy guilty of, being a really bad boy? It's easy. There's 6 predicate acts. A predicate act is essentially a charge that you have to be found guilty of for this thing to be possible. Meaning, it's like, how would I explain this? Me being my mom's child is predicated on the fact that either A, she adopted me, B, she birthed me. One of the 2 options, right? So with that in mind, okay, for Diddy to be found guilty of racketeering, there's 6 different charges. He only needs to be found of 2 potential ones. The 6 options are kidnapping, arson, bribery, trafficking, prostitution, and I believe drugs distribution of some sorts. Okay, so this is the 6 potential X. I'll put a little, a graphic up there just to clarify, but I'm going off the top of the dome. So we've heard a lot of testimony today. We've heard from Cassie, her family, many staff members. This week was the worst week for the Diddy master. All right, Puffy Nipple Combs is stressing this week, and I'll tell you why. First off, we had Capricorn Clark testify. She was one of Diddy's assistants, and she testified to a lot of things the other assistants testified to, which is he was incredibly controlling, incredibly violent. But the most poignant part, which I think everyone needs to hear, is that she corroborated Cudi's story. You don't remember Kid Cudi alleged that Diddy came to his house, broke in, moved stuff around, essentially trying to intimidate him because he was dating Cassie. And then shortly afterwards, somebody cut into the top of his Porsche and threw a Molotov cocktail that set his car on fire. He blames Diddy for this, but a lot of people said there's no proof. How do we know that Diddy was ever at his house? But there's no one who saw him. Well, that's wrong. There's multiple people who saw him, and they testified this week. So let's start with Capricorn Clark, who's his assistant. One morning, apparently Diddy just showed up at her house, which he'd never done before. She looked through the peephole. He had a gun. And here's a little fun fact. He also wore a pair of pants that was ripped right down the middle and showed his trousers. Ooh, he a freaky boy. I like that. Take that, take that, take that. So she opens the door, and he said, yo, where the fuck is Cassie? Hey, we gonna kill this nigga right now. His words. She was terrified. She didn't want to. And he said, bitch, I don't care what you want. Get fucking dressed. So he forced her to get in the car. As they drive off with the security guard and Capricorn in tow, she's terrified. She think Diddy about to kill this man. So she called them, thus corroborating the call that Kid Cudi said he and Cassie received when Diddy was on the way to his place. Cudi starts freaking out. Capricorn says, stay away. I think he might kill him. What ends up happening? Diddy arrives at Kid Cudi's house. Him and the security guard, according to Cassie, go into Cudi's house. They start moving shit around, and that's where Cudi's testimony about the dog being locked in the bathroom, presents being opened, someone clearly going through his house becomes much more credible because his own staff saw Diddy go in. What she testified to next is really interesting because apparently Cudi drove past the house speeding, and then Diddy loses his mind. He said, yo, chase that nigga, we gonna kill him. So they speed off and start chasing him as police are also pulling into Kid Cudi's house. This is where shit gets crazy, right? They speed off and chase him, and then eventually they tail off because they're saying it's too crazy right now. The security tails off. Why is this important? One, it places Diddy at the scene of the break-in, puts a witness who says they saw Diddy go in, and corroborates everything that Cudi said. We'll come back to this a little bit afterwards, but more from Capricorn Clark. Clark, Combs, and his security guard went to a nearby nightclub after the Cudi incident. She said Combs directed Clark to call Cassie Ventura and tell her that he has me, and he's not going to let me go until I come get her. Kidnapping. Remember that RICO charge that we were telling you about? It was important. Combs told her, if you guys don't convince him of that, I'll kill all of you, saying that if you guys don't convince Cudi not to talk to the police, I'll kill everyone. Again, these threats of violence are important because the overarching idea from the prosecution is that this man was incredibly violent, incredibly controlling, and basically this is also going to play into the trafficking idea because the prosecution is trying to lay the case that, oh wait, I want to make sure you see my eyes. Take that, take that, take that. The prosecution is trying to lay the case that Cassie Ventura couldn't consent because she was coerced, either through threats in regards to her career or violence, in which case we saw the video and the beatings. So they're saying, guys, there's no way she can even have an option to say no because if she does, she gets beaten or she gets coerced with threats. Okay, I think this is probably the most poignant part of Capricorn Clark's, but hey guys, you know me, I'm gonna be fair. The defense also raised some good points about her credibility. They pointed out to text messages after the fact where she wished Diddy happy birthday or said kind things to him or wanted to work with him for multiple years after the fact. And the defense raised the question, if this was such an evil man, why would you want to work with him? And then I think she had a rebuttal that kind of saved it, but not really. She essentially said, this man controlled the industry. I couldn't get work if he didn't recommend me. And I just wanted to be able to feed my kids because I had a young child at home and I needed this job and it was my dream to be in this industry. Okay, keep a note of that because I want to come back to this topic later. But like I said, I feel like the defense did a half decent job in regards to poking holes in her the way those escorts did to Cassie. All right, let me move on. I think I need more baby oil. Who needs baby oil when your personality shines like I do? Now, the fire expert. They had a fire expert come in and he was the one who investigated in regards to the car bombing. According to the fire expert, for him, this was clearly a case of arson. Someone had cut open the hood, threw a Molotov cocktail. Here's a testimony from a police officer who went to Cudi's home. This witness was important because he noticed that the Escalade that Capricorn Clark had testified to, he noticed it in front of Diddy's car. And when asked how, he said, well, because I noticed it kind of stood out and I ran the plates. And when he ran the plates, it came back to Bad Boy Records. Boom. So that places Diddy's vehicle right in front of take that Kid Cudi's house. They also have the witness inside the vehicle testifying to the fact that Diddy broke in and they witnessed him. So now you have two unrelated people testifying to the same thing. Again, important. Hey man, this corroborates what Cassie, Kid Cudi, Capricorn said about what Diddy did. He was in them bushes, boy. He said he also saw the car speed off, which again corroborates the fact that Capricorn was saying we chased Cudi's car. The next witness, which I personally think is probably one of the most damning witnesses against Diddy, Deonte Nash, the fabulous, the great stylist himself. He was looking good when he walked up in there, daddy.
I like when you like this, daddy.
Yeah, where you put my bag?
Daddy, I like when you scrambling and scraping for shit.
So what he said is he witnessed multiple beatings, which again, I think all of these people, and you know what I think was interesting about the beatings is a lot of them witnessed beatings that Cassie didn't even testify to, which tells you she was getting beat so often that when they brought her on the stand, they didn't even go through many of them. But this one in particular is important because he said he witnessed Diddy threaten her career by telling her if she didn't do what he said, her music wouldn't come out. He would contact her parents and make sure they lost their jobs. He would send the videos of the freak-offs of her to everyone. He witnessed Diddy make those threats. So what is this important for? Because it goes to the idea of coercion, right? Not just the threats of violence or taking her life, but also he witnessed the violence itself, but he also witnessed the coercion aspect, which is like, I control your life. You don't have a say in what you're going to do because I control your career, your finances, and I can come for your parents. Now, when people say, oh, well, she consented to everything, the prosecution's going to, I think, successfully argue that you can't consent when someone has this much control over you and they're making constant threats. The stylist, after she was threatened with release of tapes, the stylist asked Cassie why she wouldn't let them just come out. It would expose Diddy as well since he's on the tape. And she says, no, he's always behind the camera so they would only see me. He also corroborated Cassie that numerous times she told him that she didn't want to go to the free cost, but if she didn't, he would get mad. One time when he beat her, they wouldn't take her to the hospital. They wanted to take her to the hospital, but he forced her to go to a surgeon who would clean it up and make sure everything was kept hush-hush. The testimony was incredibly poignant from all the people who attended. A lot of the court reporters were saying this guy, you could tell the jury was really paying attention. Everything felt incredibly believable. One of the notable lines during his testimony, apparently during one of the beatings, Deonte Nash was actually one of the first people who tried to defend Cassie. So as Diddy was beating her, even though the man is small, he jumped on Diddy's back and then Diddy just spinned him the fuck off. And then he hit another assistant and went back to beating Cassie. And during that beating, he's whomping on her and then he looks at the others. He goes, look what you made me do. And then he looked at the gay guy and the female assistant. He goes, that's why you bitches ain't got no man. Which, I'm not gonna lie, that's a crazy thing to say in the middle of a beating, but I digress. Now we go to another damning witness, and she's victim number 2, right? Because you remember there's 4 alleged victims in this, maybe 3. One of them may not be testifying, but the second victim, who under the pseudonym Mia, testified today. She says, Mia testified to what her job was. She was tasked with cleaning up the room, describing the state of them as a nightmare with baby oil, candle wax, and sometimes blood left behind in many of the hotel rooms. So she would clean before the hotel staff would arrive. She testified that Cassie often didn't want to do the free cough. She would get very upset at times and he would ask and she would get physically sick. Mia said she witnessed bruises on Cassie's body, fat lips, busted eyebrows, a gash on her forehead, and black eyes. The jury was shown a photo of Mia took of Ventura at the premiere of The Perfect Match, which was one of her movies. Mia testified that Ventura had bruising on her arm and under her eye that was covered by makeup. When Ventura's injuries were too obvious to cover up, she would stay in hotels, only leaving when healed enough to cover up. Mia detailed they weren't allowed to leave the room. Again, this is important. This goes to the kidnapping charge. And from what I understand, security was put right in front of the door to make sure that Cassie couldn't leave. Why is this important? Because when they're proving the RICO case, they're trying to allege that this was a criminal enterprise. If Puff Daddy, if the diddler uses his employees to further crimes, that's RICO. In one instance, Mia was woken up to Cass running and screaming into the room. She was screaming for help, saying, you gotta help me, he's gonna kill me. She testified that she often observed Puff when he was high, so she was used to him. During many of the beatings, he wasn't under the influence of anything, however. This hurts the defense because their big claim is that Puff was an addict and he would sometimes get violent when he was under the influence of drugs. But what her and many of the other witnesses have testified to is that oftentimes his mood would switch and it wasn't always related to drugs. And through many of the beatings, that was the case. This is important. She also claimed that Diddy controlled every aspect of Cassie's life, including her work, who she could spend time with, what she could wear. He also had her credit cards, car, and all of that was placed under his company's name, even her apartment, meaning everything she had was under his company's name. He controlled her completely financially. And this corroborates what another assistant who really likes Diddy, remember he was on the stand, he didn't want to testify. He's like, I actually like the guy, I don't mind him. But he remember he asked Cassie at one point, he's like, why don't you just leave? And she says, he controls everything. He controls my whole life, my money, everything. This corroborates that because here's another assistant testifying to the fact that every aspect of Cassie's life was under this man's control. And then also, this is something really fucked up. Diddy at one point stole her phone and then ran away with it and locked himself in the bathroom. After coming out, he said, I sent all of your compromising or inappropriate photos to my phone so that I got something on you, just in case you got something on me. This is something he said to Mia. So Mia is the person, victim number 2, claims that on 2 different occasions, Sean Combs forced himself on her. All right, there was one time she was asleep in his home and she wasn't allowed to lock her door because in Puffy's house, when assistants would stay, which for her, she had to always be around him, they weren't allowed to lock their door. It's his house, his rules, don't lock your door, which is crazy. Essentially, one night she woke up and Puff was on top of her, basically undoing his pants and then forced himself out of her. She talks about how brief it was, but how it felt like a long time. She kind of testified to another incident where she was told to pack his stuff for a trip, which was, as his assistant, she always had to do. And in doing so, he came into the room and forced himself into her mouth. And she breaks down on the stand. A lot of people who were in the court kind of described the scene of her being a bit hysterical there. So now you have Brian Steele. Brian Steele is basically questioning her on whether or not these incidents ever happened. And he candidly says to her, this never happened, did it? And she said, yes, it did. Did you ever call the police? Mia says, no. Why not? I believe Puff's authority was above the police. This was before the social media and #MeToo era. There were no examples of people standing up. I thought it was under confidentiality deal with Puff's business. And I think this is like really important because when people ask, why didn't they leave? Why didn't you do this? Before the Weinstein case and a lot of the stuff that followed afterwards, a lot of people were all powerful when it came to the industry. And I could speak a little about this from personal experience because when I moved to Los Angeles when I was 20, which would have been 2010 approximately, I remember being around a lot of dancers, being a lot around entertainers because it's kind of a word that mingles very quickly. And even on a smaller scale, choreographers had so much control over the industry, who would go on tour, who would do this. And it wasn't until 10 years later that many of the predators that people spoke about in that industry were outed. But at that time, they were so insulated. They would go after kids. They would go after adults. They would promise them gigs and all this different kind of work, or they would force themselves on people. And they said, listen, bitch, no one's going to believe you. And even if you do tell anyone, I'll make sure that you never work. And I'll say this too, Mia, like many other people who worked for Diddy, a lot of these people are very drawn by the allure of the entertainment industry. They really want to make it. And there's a sense of desperation that I think for the average person, you guys can't understand. But for people who are like really interested in this stardom world, there's a lot they're sacrificing and tolerating in terms of beatings, grape, all these different things. And that's a part of the psyche. You're trying to balance many things. You're trying to balance your dreams, your aspirations. You're trying to balance how much harm you're receiving. But another layer of this is that Diddy wasn't always consistently bad. And that's what everyone testified. He's like, when he was good, he was amazing. But when he was bad, he was horrible. And when you have these roller coasters of emotions, it's very easy to engage in cognitive dissonance. It's very easy to let go of the fact that on one hand, he's this. On the other, hey bitch, give me my, right? There's 2 sides. It just takes me to take off the wig for you to see how real I can get. And this baby oil, I'm gonna put it on you. Take that, take that, take that. That should be a song. That should be a song. Wait, oh shit. I'm about to get back into business, baby. I think that was a really poignant part to contextualize what everything is happening in. Personally, I think this week was probably one of the worst weeks for Diddy because up until this point, you know, everything really hinged on Cassie, maybe a few other testimonies. But this week really fleshed out the crimes and the basis for RICO. And then the trafficking, they're starting to layer a few more bricks where they're getting to that point. I think it's very hard for Diddy's defense to really do much in this case because even though they do a good job of poking holes into some of the people's credibility, the issue is that between people who like Diddy and still love him to this day and support him, or the people who hate Diddy, or the police officer, the fire chief, all these unrelated people, everyone is testifying very consistently to who Diddy is and what he was doing. And that makes all these little holes of credibility become kind of irrelevant, because like if 3 different people who have no connection to each other all saying the same thing about the man, it's hard not to believe that over, but why did you send a birthday message? Why did you say you loved him? Why did you want to work? Like these things don't hold the same weight, you know? And I think as a result, from where we stand today, I'm very confident they're going to get him, obviously, on the Mann Act violation because, I mean, they have the escorts, they have Cassie, they have the financial transactions, they have the flight charts. That's going to happen. So he's already looking at up to 10 years for those charts. And I think there's 2 of them. So depending on how that works, it's quite some time. And I'm pretty confident they got him on RICO. They don't have to have him on the trafficking. And I'll give you guys that. That may be one where they may not be able to prove it. But they got him on RICO. And RICO's no joke. You're talking about 20 years right there.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I'd be very curious to see how the next couple weeks, but I think right now the prosecution is doing a really good job of laying their case. And I think this week was probably one of the worst ones for Diddy because on cross-examination, when it comes to Deonte Nash, for example, the defense literally had nothing. They talked to him. It looked awkward. I was reading the transcripts. It wasn't convincing. So they couldn't poke a single hole into anything the man said. And he really corroborated that she was threatened. She was coerced. She was constantly beaten. So those are all things that leave the realm of domestic. You're not there anymore. Any of you guys use your business. And if you run a business, you know this. You have to be really careful about your receipts. You have to be careful about what laws you violate. And the stakes for Diddy are so much higher than you can imagine because he's not just looking at jail time. If he's getting convicted on guilty, the government can seize his fortune. They can seize all the assets of Bad Boy Records. They can seize all that money. It's possible that his family will lose most of their fortune. So that $400 million net worth may disappear. So the stakes are really high. I think this week, in particular, I took a real serious interest in a lot of the testimony, and I think it was really damning. But yeah, that's most of what I got for today, folks. Did y'all like that? Was I shining? Yeah. We're just boys being boys. Hey, nigga, baby oil ain't gay. Babies are straight, because when they come out, they ain't got no sexuality. They just go goo goo gaga, my nigga. You feel me? Ain't nothing gay about going goo goo gaga. Yeah. So baby oil is just making sure that you got the opportunity to go back to the time where you was your straightest. When I'm cuddling with the boys, sometimes I'm like, hey man, you look a little tense. Let me lather it up. Yeah. Make sure you nice and smooth so that back is shiny. So when I'm beating it from behind, I can get a good look at just all your creases and domes. You dig what I'm saying? There's cheeks and then there's shiny cheeks. I got 2 of them here. But best believe I got 2 more. All right, let me stop playing. All I'm trying to say is baby oil is something all of y'all should definitely include. Right now, we got the Diddler special. 2 John & Johnson bottles on Amazon for $25. Making sure that next time you getting with your girl and you doing gay shit, fellas, make sure that shit's shiny. All right? And for all my fellas who like being with the homies, make sure y'all can clearly see each other in the dark. Because if you shining, Cassie's lying. Hey, man, think I'm gonna make my move? I'm about to run a solo channel, you know what I'm saying? You're about to be left alone with me. Tell me, baby. Tell me if you like it. Man, I need a solo career, man. Priest can't hold a candle to me. For real, though. If you hold a candle to me, I'll blow it out. It ain't my birthday, nigga. Turn the lights off. All right.